Get ready for another exciting episode of We're Just Ken, where comedy meets life.
That's good. I like it.
They tried to hold us down, Colin.
I know. It's been too long.
It has been a little bit. Not from lack of effort on our parts, I don't think. Trying to get guests and trying to get interesting guests, which that's definitely a good way to describe our guest here today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a little bit. We got some cobwebs to shake off in the podcast interview world. So yeah, hopefully I don't stumble too much.
I was gonna say we've only missed like 50 world historical events since the last time we recorded.
Yeah, us trying to stay on top of the cultural. I think our first episode we talked about how we're going to be pop culture as well as interview. I think we failed at the first portion. We've been really good talking. Dr. Tucker, I'll introduce you here in a little bit. We've been really good about talking about our fantasy football season. So I'm sure the audience has loved to hear that.
We learned it's not quite so easy. You can't just call yourself an influencer and start getting the checks in the mail. You got to actually do something.
Speaking of our guests, it's good to, for the first time ever, there's 3 doctorates between the 3 people on the podcast. So I'm just really glad we won't, I just feel, really glad that it's equal, but all kidding aside, our guest today is Dr. Robert Tucker. Yes.
Wow, I like that.
Look at that. And it only one time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Getting better.
Colin still got his fastball, or he found his fastball, one of the two. Yeah, so I met Dr. Tucker at Howard Payne, as with a lot of our guests, come from a small university. We actually were in the MBA program together at the same time. He had already gotten his doctorate. He was a doctor of fine arts. Actually, I don't want to go into too much of the detail. I kind of want him to tell us. But yeah, so we met then. He was a professor at Howard Payne. I believe he was dean of fine arts there at Howard Payne. Since then, he's gone on to be dean of business. I believe, man, I may be butchering this, Dr. Tucker, so you just correct me here in a little bit. Yeah, he's moved over to Hardin-Simmons, which if anybody's unfamiliar, going from Howard Payne to Hardin-Simmons in the small central Texas world that's like going from Michigan to Ohio State, sort of. Going from Alabama to Auburn, going from the Yankees to the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Big rivalry. Well, at least Howard Payne probably considers Hardin-Simmons a rival, and Hardin-Simmons may not consider Howard Payne a rival. Yeah, Dr. Tucker, thank you so much for hopping on.
I'm honored. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, good deal. Like I said, we met back in 2013, I believe, maybe it was 2012, in the MBA program. And I found it interesting back then because you already were obviously a doctorate, already were well into, your profession and what you stayed in. And I am curious, what made you want to, I don't even know if you intended to switch fields back then into the business world. Maybe you can go into a little bit of how you got into teaching and why the transition, at the top level. And yeah.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Well, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and was very involved in typical things that children do, sports and church and then music. And I was pretty good at music. So did that through high school. I was on the chess club, was pretty good at that, but not amazing. So I came to Hardin-Simmons mostly as a musician, although I really started as a law enforcement major and wanted to be a police officer. And so, but I won a big scholarship, played my horn. I thought, well, that's what I should do. So I switched over to music. And then I got my master's at University of Cincinnati in French horn performance and conducting. And then my first job was at McNeese State University in Lake Charles, Louisiana, as a music professor. And had our first 2 children there. And then after 5 years, felt like I wanted to get back to Texas. And so I took a public school job, big pay raise, from a fairly large state school in Louisiana to a small public school in Texas, big pay raise. Did that for several years as a band director and enjoyed that. And then Howard Payne University, called me. I didn't really, I wasn't too sure about that, but everything sort of worked out, and I accepted the position as director of bands at Howard Payne. Started working on my doctorate in fine arts about that time from Texas Tech. Finished that in 2001, and enjoyed being the band director a lot. But there was a dean opening, so I went ahead and applied for that at Howard Payne, and was named the dean of fine arts over music, art, and theater. And then in, I guess it was about 2012, we had started our MBA program. Dr. Mark Patton and Lois Patton, I believe,
Yes, sir.
heading that up. And they had some good professors. And I've always been interested in the business world. But I had zero business hours, unlike the other people who were starting the MBA at the time. I think and so I had to take these back courses, and financial accounting. I thought, well, I love this. This is great. I'm really good at it and natural, and was learning about the business world. And then suddenly I had to take managerial accounting, and it was a new adventure, and I found myself studying all the time, and it was not natural. So that was very humbling, but I enjoyed learning about it, and I enjoyed even being humbled by it. And so then I found myself knee deep in the MBA program, and learning things that I didn't know existed, and it was very, very exciting for me. So finished that up. And when did you finish yours, Ben?
2013.
Yeah, so we graduated together.
Me and my wife walked in December of 2013. So I don't know.
Me too. We're graduates together of that program.
I don't have a lot of memories of it for some reason. It was pretty cool. I remember Howard Payne wrote an article because in the meantime of me and Angela starting the program, and then when we walked, we actually got married. In between that, we got married in November of that year, and we walked in December. Wait,
Yeah.
no, I'm off on that. I can't remember, but maybe we got engaged. I can't remember. I should know. I got married in 2013, so I guess I did. That timeline does add up. But anyways,
it should be the same day as your anniversary, Ben.
It should. Well, I know when my anniversary is, but I was trying to think. Like, I took a job in between there too, and I moved up to the colony. But I guess I didn't technically walk until December. Yeah. So yeah.
Right. So we walked together. But so in 2013, I had taught in London, I think, 2 years before that, and then. So we have a son who's now 35, but at the time he had graduated from high school, or was about to graduate from high school, and we felt like we weren't serving his needs very well. He's autistic, and he was in at that time the MHMR system in Brownwood, and so I was kind of exploring other opportunities that would be in an area that could serve him a little bit better. And so I applied for the job at Hardin Simmons, and we found out the disabled services for disabled adults were pretty strong in Abilene. And so I applied for that, got that job, and moved over to Hardin Simmons. I felt bad, that was my alma mater, but I loved my time at Howard Payne as band director, and then at Dean. And as Dean, we have a lot of family ties there. My mother still lives in Brownwood, and so it was kind of a hard transition, but we did it primarily for Joel, and that's been a good move for Joel. Of course, that was 11 years ago, nearly 12 years ago, and so he's now much older, and we feel like he's being served real well through the system. He still lives with us. So then I was Dean of Fine Arts, but when I arrived at Hardin Simmons was financially struggling a little bit, and the fine arts area was big but very expensive, and so I kind of projected what would happen, and that they would start doing some cuts. And so I looked at that, and I thought, I have a little bit of a business background now, so I started my doctorate, second doctorate in business administration. And then as I was working on that, they they kind of closed up the School of Music and Fine Arts, moved it into liberal arts. And so I was about to lose my dean's job. So I applied for the dean of business at Hardin Simmons. I'm not sure what would happen on that, and got that job. And so I came over, and now I'm in my business office. And so they created a school, the College of Business and Professional Studies. So that includes education. So I head up business and education, and now I have a doctorate in fine arts and a doctorate in business administration. So here I am.
There you go.
Robert, can I let me ask you a hard question, because I'm at a Christian university that doesn't really have the fine arts. We actually have an amazing music program, but we don't have a very expansive offerings of degrees you can finish with. We don't have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. And I say all that to say that I know a lot of small universities are cutting costs, understandably, and they're closing fine arts programs. What do you see as the long-term effect of that? Is that going to funnel the fine arts to the big state schools? Like, I don't know. I think they're so valuable, but as you point out, they're not necessarily money makers. In fact, they can cost a lot of money. So how do we retain the fine arts, or do we just cut them loose to those institutions that can afford them?
It would be sad to lose fine arts in our small universities, but partly because fine arts programs serve a community, a broader community need in the arts.
Sure.
People love the arts. So what does a small university do? Well, they got to start figuring out how to monetize their music program a little bit, or become a very strong recruiting arm for the university, either in both of those. So you have to represent your university in multiple ways in the fine arts, but also it's probably not good enough to say, well, we're going to just be expensive and that's the way it is. We need to find ways to keep attracting, I think, dollars for the arts. Music is a multi-billion-dollar industry around the world, so it's not without its economic benefits. That's for sure. But in college and universities, we don't like to think about that too much, and so we have to start finding ways to benefit economically in the university and in the broader community. I think that's essential. So it'd be a shame, I think, for small schools to lose the fine arts programs.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if there's this big discussion about what are the liberal arts, how do we retain the fine arts, and I wonder, projecting ahead, as these small universities sort of pivot and stay viable, do they take the money makers, the business schools and the econ programs and STEM and all this, and do they try to offset and defray some of the costs of the liberal arts and the fine arts so that the university can retain its identity? Or do you just go to a sort of business model of whatever makes money is what we're going with?
The market probably dictates that everybody be a business major. That's cool. Our business program is the largest one at Hardin Simmons, and I'm glad that we're endowed, and so we support other areas around the campus, and I think that's very cool. But if you only sell what you think the market's going to support, it sort of limits what a university can be in the liberal arts. So I think it'd be a crying shame just to put all your resources into those market areas that are supported without the broader concept of what a university means. I would be sad, and I hope that doesn't happen in our world. Everywhere I go, every grocery store, every restaurant, everywhere, I hear music, and I see art, and I see color, and I see excitement, and all that is the arts. The arts are a major part of our society. I don't see dollars around, and I see evidence of economy, of course, but I can see the arts and feel the arts around me. So I think the arts are vital in our society and in our world.
And I think that's a similar thing that every industry is going through, is that there are certain sectors of industries that don't make money, but it kind of completes the whole thing. And I was in healthcare finance for a little bit, and my whole thing that I was pretty much in charge of, well, let's look at ways to cut costs and then drive revenue centers. Cut costs here, drive revenue centers. And it's like, that's true. And you see that even in college football. If you think about everything's going to the SEC and Big Ten and all these other universities that make up college football, they do. Right. Baylor University, my father-in-law played football there. It makes up what college football is as a whole, sure. But it doesn't make as much money as, Texas A&M, University of Texas. But does that make it any less part of the ecosystem? I don't think it should. And I think you see that in everywhere. It's right. Cut costs and let's drive it. And I just think it's going to be, the whole product's going to be worse overall.
Yeah, I do too. And I kind of think it'll cycle around a little bit. I think that when you lose something that's vital, it's kind of like I think it was a church in England that they got tired by bickering about whether you should do choruses or hymns. And so the pastor said, well, no more music. We won't do any music at our church. And this went on for about a month. And people are saying, no, we really miss it. Why can't we, bring it back? It may not be totally to my liking all the time, but I really want music. And that's when that chorus, Here I Am to Worship, came out from that time. And I think I really believe if we tried to get rid of the arts in our world, it would be impossible. And I think people would demand it back. I think we have that need in our lives for it.
I certainly agree. And it's hard for me, Robert, in the humanities. I teach American history. It's the same uphill battle of, yes, I'm sort of filtered into the gen ed, so I'm servicing a lot of students, but most of them are not my majors, right. And trying to convince them that this is good for them as a human, just like the fine arts are good for them as a human. There's a lot of tension there. And so institutionally, I think it's a hard sell to the public and potential students to say, you don't necessarily know you want this, but I think you should want this. That's a hard way to get students in the door. Does that resonate with you at all?
Oh yeah. No, it's because it's a little nebulous. It's a little bit intangible. But when I was at Howard Payne, I think you were there, Ben. It was either 2012 or 2013. I think it was 2012. But I started the Friends of the Arts, and I started. It seems like a crazy idea now, but at the time, I thought, well, let's just try it. So I charged $5. You give me $5 and you can be a friend of the arts. And what do you get for doing this? Well, you get on our mailing list. We'll let you know of all the arts events in the area. And when you come to an event, we have a little button we'll give you. Or it may have been a ribbon. I think I've gravitated later to a button. And almost everybody had $5 in their pocket. And I have a little list and write them down. Okay, you're a friend of the art, And so my goal was the next year I might charge them $10, but they had to benefit from this. It's not just, hey, I'm a friend of the arts, but what do you get from this? So suddenly, I mean, we had a couple hundred members really fast, and then that was growing real fast. And had I not left, I think that would have grown to several thousand in a fairly short time. So financially, it was actually kind of providing some spending money for us as well as a support organization for that. My point is, I think people are willing to spend money if they get something for that, for an arts experience.
And it's funny you say that. I enjoyed, and this is it's probably just a timing thing. I really enjoyed our MBA program, or at least the year I was in there, because I had you on my left, who came from, the fine arts thing. On my right was a business owner in Brownwood that was trying to grow their business. I don't know if the MBA program is still comprised of all these little bitty pieces. I honestly haven't kept up with it. But what it didn't offer, maybe bigger MBA programs had with maybe connections, it really taught me like different ways, the way everyone's thinking about it. And I think that's when and I actually have your book here.
Well, how about that? Thanks.
And I think that's when I think you had just finished that book.
Yeah.
Which book is that, Ben? I didn't see the title.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to, Like a Crown, Adventures in Autism.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Tucker, it's comprised of a bunch of short stories about his son, Joel. And it was just something I really enjoyed. I don't know if I told you, Dr. Tucker, but my son actually was diagnosed with autism.
Oh, okay.
But it was interesting because you had just finished it. And I think Earl, you went to a story about how like you don't write a book if you think it's going to make you money.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting thing because, you know, I don't have any idea about publishing. I have no idea about self-publishing and going down that road. But it was just something that the MBA program at that time offered was all these different stories and all these different backgrounds and all the different characters that made it up. And then you top that off with our fearless leader, Dr. Patton, and just all his stories as well. I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just think that an overall education, and obviously that's different for everybody, but like the overall complete education I got in the MBA program from everybody's stories just was invaluable to me.
Oh yeah. Each class and each professor offered something unique and special that I took from it. But you're right, the other students also offered just as much from the experiences. I learned a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd love to get into the book for a little bit, if you don't mind. And I know you said you have another book coming out.
I've been working on volume 2. So
volume 2.
This, in fact, doing this will inspire me to finish it because I need to.
There you go. I guess first things first, you know, and you kind of go into it in the book, but why did you decide to write a book about your son and just kind of growing and learning?
I noticed as he was going through school and dealing with him in life and in social situations, and I noticed that people were uncomfortable and they didn't know what to do. The teachers didn't know what to do. Parents of autistic children didn't know what to do. Employers didn't know what to do. But people were, so I use this word ignorant in a nice way. They just didn't know. They just were ignorant of what should we do? In the old days, a long time ago, when children were autistic, we'd probably put them in institutions and make the institution figure it out. And we as a society gave up on special learners. Kind of breaks my heart to say that out loud, but that's true. We just sort of said, well, they can't fit in, so we're going to have to relegate them to their own little world. And so I wrote the book to serve the purpose of showing how there are ways to bring these people into the fold. We love them in our families, but we can love them in our churches too. We can love them in the community. We can love them at the mall. We can love them at the restaurants. And so I intended to use it for it to be a resource for parents, for teachers, and for community people. And I haven't changed the world with it, didn't expect to. But people who have read about it and seen it or experienced Joel tell me that helps them, because truth is, you come across someone on the spectrum probably every day, everywhere you go. I have students on the spectrum. When I go to the grocery store, I see it and I recognize it now real fast. And I'll reach out to them and can I help you with something? And so then other teachers come to me, hey, I've got this student in class. I'm not sure he's doing this odd thing, or well, he might be on the spectrum. Here's a way to help that person. And so in my own little tiny niche of the world, maybe I'm able to help other people deal with this. That's
well, you helped me. It's funny when my son was early on, we didn't know, he wasn't diagnosed. It's one of those things you until later in life, until he starts really being able to come with sentences, or it's odd thing because you don't know when to diagnose. You don't know. There's really not a whole lot out there on how to diagnose. There obviously are, special physicians and doctors that can, but it's almost like an invisible. It's an invisible thing. It's one of those things that every kid looks normal. However you say that. Whereas other things like Down syndrome, there is a visual thing there, and it's almost like from what I can tell is that if there was a visual thing for someone that was on the spectrum, it honestly made things easier for other people how to deal or how to interact with them.
That's
As
right.
sad as that is, and and it's just one thing I dove into. I dove into the reading. You know, I got this book, so I remember it sticking out to me that you said that. I think you said your son had Asperger's at the time.
Yeah.
I guess that was a official diagnosis. Now that's not even a diagnosis anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
And I read that. I read Temple Grandin. I went down the road, and it honestly like overwhelmed me. But one thing I did find comfort in were the stories that you told. And one thing very particular that stuck out to me and was that you said that it's not going away. And you were very blunt. And that's something I needed to hear. Because when your son's 2 or 3 years old, every time he wakes up, you think, oh, it's going to be different today. I don't know if that's how you felt. It kind of seems like that's how you felt.
Right.
It's going to be different today. Like, oh my gosh, he's better. You know, whatever quote unquote better is. Like, oh my gosh, he's healed. And then the day goes on, and it's like, no, it's not. And that was something that I needed to hear. I needed to see that it's just something that you're going to have to, deal with every day of your life and every day of their life.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that stuck out to me for sure.
Yeah. Well, as parents, you love your child no matter what. You want to do everything for them, and you should. You should try vitamin therapy. You should try good diets. It's all good for them. You should try certain kinds of therapy, certain kind of behavior workings, and educate people how to deal with this. And you should try every system of education that there is. And I'm not saying those don't work. They do. They all help. It's all good. Good diet is good diet. It's very appropriate. Vitamins, that's great things. And you do enzyme therapy, and you do test after test after test. But in the end, the better thing, the final thing is accept who that person is and help them grow to the next level. I mean, that's ultimately what we do. We do that. We need to do that as society. We do that as educators. We do that with our children.
Robert, do you know, growing up in the early 90s, I remember I had some family who, I think even at the time in the early 90s, the word autism was used, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering, going back further, how did people even conceptualize what we now know of as autism? Like 70s, 80s, is autism a term?
Well, I should have been more prepared. There was a psychologist, famous psychologist, the name escapes me, it's not Bruner, who determined that autism, I think it was in the early 60s. This is just laughable.
Yeah, it was right when Temple Grandin was the term autism came out right after she kind of was diagnosed with something different. Or maybe she was one of the first ones that was diagnosed with it, because they treated her differently than they did someone prior.
She's made a huge difference in our society. Well, let me get back to her in a second. So this psychologist determined that autism was caused by a frozen mother, a bad mother, a mother who didn't love their child enough and reach out to enough. Okay, so fast forward then. After that, we had very little autism. It almost disappeared from our society. Why? Well, what mother's going to say, my child's autism? Oh, you're a bad mother.
Mm-hmm.
It must be you caused this by being a bad mother. Well, no one's going to ever admit. So it disappeared. And then another psychologist came along and said, no, that's not true. We don't entirely know the causes of this, but it's not a bad mother. And so then suddenly became, fashionable is not the right word, but more accepted. And Temple Grandin has helped a lot by explaining that the senses that come to her, the world at her is she's looking at it differently from how other people look at it. Mm-hmm. So now it's a lot more accepted, I think. Now our job is to help these people that are dealing with this become a part of our society, be contributing members of our society.
Yeah, and I apologize. I brought up Temple because I remember I think it was the Autistic Brain, in her book, she brought up that if she had been, whenever the official like diagnosis or whenever that bad mom or something came out, she was lucky that she was treated by a doctor or not treated, but maybe, had a physician or someone tell her that things are different and you have to work on something. And it was like after that point is when it basically became, well, there's nothing you can do. It's the mom's fault, when it's very evident, as she explains, her mom loved her. I mean, her mom knew something was different and went like above and beyond trying to figure out what that was.
Yeah.
And I think that helped her, and kind of the early on, idea of autism really kind of changed and was shaped because of the way that the timing of it, of her being kind of diagnosed to her bringing light on the subject, really kind of helped change the way a lot of people thought about it. And I don't know if it had anything to do with the psychologist that you mentioned earlier, but I know that she was a major player in that.
Well, and this is good and bad. Rain Man, when Rain Man came out, what year was that? Early 80s?
I was going to say early 80s.
Well, it's a great movie, and and Dustin Hoffman does a great job with it. It's a wonderful film, but it made people think that if you're autistic, you've got special gifts in other areas. You're weak here, strong here. Well, that's a little bit unfair to most autistic children, because you think that they're brilliant geniuses in this area. So you're looking for that special something. You're a savant. And so I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, Joel, I can tell he's autistic, but he's got to be a savant in other areas. Well, that I think he's got some nice gifts, but it's a little unfair to label that and put that on someone when maybe they're just normal people that want to just kind of fit in.
What instrument does Joel play? I can't remember.
He does play the organ.
Organ, that's right.
The organ.
I remember in your book you say he loves playing it, and I don't know. I just loved how brutally honest you were, because I feel like you have to be that as a parent. That sometimes you have to be honest. I remember you saying that, like, I guess maybe in a nice way, he struggles, but he keeps playing.
He loves it.
He'll play until you tell him, like, until you like almost have to take it away from him. Like he'll play it. And I think he plays it for church some. I think you mentioned that. Yeah. But I think it's okay as parents to also say he's not perfect. Like just because he may have, may have autism and he does this thing great, we don't have to say he's the greatest at it.
That's right.
And it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It kind of, again, your honesty and just the way you kind of, just told normal stories. It really helped. It's really helped me as a parent, grow into that. That's why I wrote the book. That's the reason, to help. You also warned me, and I should have taken more advice from it. But it was basically, I think you said that if you ever told Joel, we're going to a baseball game, like in 3 days or something, he'd say, "Oh, I can't wait to get peanuts at the baseball game. I can't wait." And I can't remember the story. And boy, does my son do that. If you mention one thing about going to Target or going to the red store is what he calls it. I got to go to Target. I want to go to the toy aisle. I want to go to the toy aisle at Target. I want to go to
No, it's true. And varying that is really hard. It's still hard for him if you change your mind about something.
Yeah. And again, that I should have learned the lesson you were trying to teach us, in that of like, maybe we don't have to bring up expectations, because as soon as you say something, they're going to be, there's really no such thing as expectation. Yeah. It's right away. We have to do this. I know you said we're going to go later, but no, like we got to go right now.
Yeah. No, you have to be careful. Even the other day, I said, we're going to go to this place, and he had decided we should go down this road, and I wanted to go down this road. Well, apparently one time he went down this road and there was a pothole, and so he decided that's the wrong way. So I started turning. He said, "No, Dad, you have to go this way. Go this way." So I gave in, which happens a lot, and with the way he wanted to go. So okay.
Yeah, and that's another thing. And I'm sorry, I'm dominating this, but it is one thing. You're basically, I guess, you're basically taught, maybe it's dogma, that you can't let into your kids, like you can't let them win. But in a sense, and this is how my son is, like he doesn't view it as him winning.
No,
and so it's not like you're giving way to a bad behavior. You're like, because my son's the sweetest kid in the world, and I think, and on the spectrum, I don't know where he lays. Extremely intelligent. He's able to. He's on his. He doesn't have really any help in school, but it's So I don't know what that is, but it's when he will act bad. I'm not saying he won't act bad, but when he's in these moods of we have to do this, he's not doing that in a way of I can't think of the word right now, but it's not like he's
not being mean or stubborn,
not being disrespectful. It's just he only knows to do this thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're better off just doing it because you're going to hear it if you don't. And so it's almost like, and then when you have another son, or like I do, I can't let him get away. I can't let him dictate things because it is different. And so that's going to be interesting. I have a 2-year-old, so he's not quite there yet, but it is going to be interesting how I manage those two expectations.
Yeah, no, it's true. When we go to the grocery store, he likes to buy his own things occasionally, a candy bar or Coke or whatever it is. And he has some money. That's a whole nother side of this to deal with, money. But I'll check out whatever, buy milk or whatever. And now it's his turn. And so it's a Coke, and it's $1.47. So he'll get out his wallet and his change thing, and he'll put $1, and then he'll count 47 cents. But he puts one coin at a time out there, and there's people lined up, and the cashier's going, "Oh, please hurry," But I want him to do that, and I want him to be as slow and careful as he needs to be for him, but also for the cashier, but also for the people frustrated. I want them to learn the patience of watching other people struggle, and he'll do it right. And it'll be exactly right. He'll put the exact amount of change on there. And it's good for everybody to experience that. Sometimes I've told people that.
No, I think that's great. I was actually going to ask you both, it's somebody with children who are not on the spectrum, but being around a lot of families with kids on the spectrum, how would y'all suggest to your friends and family to navigate that? I have a hard time. I don't want to tell my kids incorrect information about somebody else's kids. And so sometimes I don't know how to navigate that, where I'm like, we're going to go play with so-and-so, but I don't want to stigmatize that kid and say, well, don't do this or do this, but I also want to prepare them for, here's how we can have a positive play date or whatever. So what would y'all recommend to families in those situations, especially with my young kids who they can't really wrap their minds around what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, children aren't they don't have a lot of judgment in them against others. Children generally don't see a lot of differences. However, they also need to learn to be patient with each other and tolerant. So when something happens, I hope that we don't teach our children to be critical of others. Instead, we need to teach our children to be patient and care and recognize that some people don't respond in this way. And I think if children can learn that, they'll learn to deal with all the differences they will encounter in their lives, because there's an awful lot of differences out there. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the story. I'm glad whenever I see children of different abilities doing things together. I think that's great for them.
Yeah. And I'm still, again, my son's only 7, so I haven't obviously gone through the range that you have, Dr. Tucker. It's one thing that I struggle with, and I may cry, so y'all forgive me, but it is difficult. And I don't know how Joel was, but Ford doesn't quite get play. He'll play. Oh boy, He'll play. And when he plays with a very patient, kid of his age, it's great. Like they do whatever Ford wants, and he runs. He controls the situation, and it's great. Unfortunately, I know that there's a time coming where and it's already kind of here with his classmates. I see it. They are already, you go to kindergarten parties, and they're already kind of tired, of dealing with Ford sometimes, and that breaks my heart. But there are some that are fantastic with them, and I think that's you just try to navigate towards the ones that are friends with him and are friendly, and then kind of let him control. But I also want to teach Ford that that's not exactly how you play, and he's probably we have a 4-year-old nephew, and they're like best friends because they're similar types of play right now. So if that stays, and I don't know how it's going to progress, but if he's just a few years behind in that, and again I don't know how it's going to be. I think it'll be okay with play and with friends, but that's something that I can't. I'd love to be able to look down the road 10 years and tell you that everything's worked out just how I want, but I can't do it.
Well, part of our job as parents and caregivers is to protect our children also. So you want to protect them from any kind of criticism or bullying or anything that doesn't work real well, because children can be merciless to other children. So it's good to watch out for that, which I got nervous when Joel was going through school. If I went up to school, I was afraid if I went up to school and saw him being bullied that I wouldn't react very well to that. So I got nervous. And so we would ask him every day, how's it going? And I'm sure some things went on that would have bothered me, but Joel doesn't have criticism in his heart against others. He just does. It's not in him to be that way. So
that's how Ford is.
Yeah.
Robert, what were you and your wife's thoughts as you projected ahead? And I don't know how early your son was diagnosed, but were there thoughts of, okay, when he turns 18 or 21 or 25, is he going to be independent? Is he going to live with us his whole life? Do you recall y'all's thoughts at the time, or even your desires? Did you want him to get to a place where he could live independently?
Well, sure. You always want that, but we kind of realized his reaction time was not timely. And so we felt like early on he would not be able to drive, and that's still true. He just couldn't do that. He couldn't react quickly enough. As far as work, and I mentioned this in the book, he could hold down a paying job, except for minimum wage also means minimum expectations. And so if an employer could pay half of minimum wage, he might meet that expectation. But it's hard to get him a regular job because they have to pay a certain amount with labor expectations. So that's I think a societal tension that we have. So what he does is he does a lot of volunteer work in the area. But someone pulled me aside when he was maybe 14 or 15. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the book, and suggested that we get him in the MHMR system at the time in Brownwood. And so we did. And I'm really thankful for that. And so he receives SSI benefits, which helps him financially. And also we are his legal guardians, so that it becomes our responsibility to care for him and to look out for him through this process. And that's still true. We'll be his legal guardians forever. So if someone convinced him to get married, he's off at one of his events he does, and someone says, let's get married, and they do, we can put a stop to that as legal guardians if that ever happens. It nearly did. He came home and he said, well, so-and-so is my girlfriend, and okay, and we're going to get married in 2 weeks, and we're going to move to Italy and live there forever. So of course my wife and I went, okay, let's figure this out. So we were able to convince him that wasn't going to work. So
at what point did, this is one thing me and my wife are talking about, when did relationships become a point of, I guess, topic for y'all to talk to Joel about? Was there a particular age?
There are some difficult conversations related to normal hormones that happen as a teenager and all that. But and he always wanted a girlfriend because his brothers had a girlfriend, and that was what you do. And so we had to convince him. We had to talk to him about, it's okay to have a girlfriend. We want you to have a girlfriend, but there are limits that you need to act on in your relationship to having a girlfriend. And so we talked about it frequently and often, to the point where he understood. I still worry about it a little bit, I have to be honest. And so when he has an adaptive recreation program that he goes to, and so we've told the workers, just we don't want him to be alone with a girl in a room. Not that anything bad would happen. We just want to prevent.
And I feel like that's what planning ahead has become a major. Not only has Ford made me a better parent overall, he's made me a better planner, because you have to plan. You have to kind of set, what needs to happen, what you need to bring, what.
Well, you need, if you're going somewhere, need to understand some things about relationships, but also on the spectrum, they need additional guidance.
Yeah,
I think. I
just meant general, just planning.
Sure.
You think of things differently, and if they're going somewhere, what do they need? What are the
No,
so yeah, not, like I said, not only has he made me a better parent, he's made me a better planner, a better just forward thinker in general.
Concerts he loves music. We want him to love music, but he starts reacting physically when he hears something he likes, and he moves his hands real fast. He does stuff, and so we have to remind ourselves, when we go to a concert, we need to sit a little bit away from people, or around. If we have to be near someone he doesn't know, we need to kind of put him in between us or somewhere. We don't want to stop him. I don't want to say, do not react to the music. Why would you want to do that? It's great that he has joy from that, but we also don't want to make others uncomfortable. So you're right, Ben. You're constantly thinking about how to make this work.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I had one more question for Robert. I know he's got to go here in a few minutes, and this is back to our discussion at the beginning. Robert, I'm just impressed with your longevity in higher education and the different degrees and the areas you've gone into. I wonder, with all of that experience, of course, I've only been doing it about 10 years. Where do you see the future of higher ed going? I think in higher ed, we see COVID as this sort of shift, not just because of what it was, but the future of universities and colleges. Are we going to see this COVID cliff and less students coming in? And it's the questions I was asking at the beginning. Do we need to pivot into a business model? Like, where do you see, I don't know, universities going in the next 15, 20 years?
I may say something shocking, and probably no one will agree with me, and that's okay. I think if we don't figure out how to make higher education an intrinsic desire for learning, if our rewards are only extrinsic in higher education, I think we're seeing the decline of higher education fast. And I think AI is part of that story. But I think, on the other hand, if we can find the joys of the intrinsic desire to learn and what that means, and not just for an A, and employers not just looking for the A student, but for everybody, I think higher education can actually grow and improve. But it's going to take some shifting away from things. It's going to take some different kinds of motivation. And so I'm questioning the meritocracy of our society and higher education's role in that someday.
Well, no, you're preaching to Colin's soul right now.
I was going to say, I love that answer, because I think we have to give students a vision or an imagination for a better life, not just a better career. Now, they can go hand in hand, but I do think if you could have a, an ideal life or an ideal career, I think people should want an ideal life as sort of disposition toward learning and what we deem as success. And I think that, universities can play a big role in that, but I don't know, maybe you've experienced this, Robert. It's sort of like, I think only if everyone's on board, it can't just be the isolated instructors or students. It has to be a sort of missional mindset, which that's a whole separate discussion. But the Christian university, I think, teaches the whole person, or that should be its aim. So
Sure.
Anyway, no, I love that view of yours.
Oh, thanks. I was afraid it'd be too radical.
Oh no. Colin's he's preached about that on this very channel multiple times. Well, Dr. Tucker, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I just looked. You can still find this book on Amazon.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you're getting a lot of mailbox money.
I still get a few royalty payments here and there. It always surprises me.
I bought it. I read it about it's been 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. I still keep with it for sure. But yeah, Like a Crown, Adventures in Autism by Dr. Tucker. Second part 2 coming out, TBD. I'll definitely be on the. I'll definitely get that as soon as it comes out. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for talking about your career and obviously going into the book and everything. And and I have a deeper appreciation for a lot of things thanks to you. So yeah, no, we appreciate it.
Thank you, and best wishes to both of you.
Well, thank you. Good meeting you, Robert. I'll play us out here, and you guys have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.